Here's a little disclaimer. Throughout this video, I'm going to be referring to the writers and creators of the Game of Thrones TV series, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, as D&D, not to be confused with the popular game Dungeons & Dragons. All these years. All these years. And this is how you treat me. I've supported you for 8 years and this is how you repay me. It's disgusting. How would Daddy George feel about this, huh? You sit there. Look at how complex I am. Oh, I have all these really cool characters and anything can happen at any moment. Well, all that's down the fucking toilet.
Give me something for the pain and let me die.
I love Game of Thrones. I read all the books, watched the show over and over, and I truly believe that the first 4 seasons stand as some of the best television ever produced. Season 6 was when things started to fall apart a little bit, but then season 7 rolled around and things got really messy, with characters unlocking fast travel and developing very thick plot armor. And then there's some silly scenes. One example is when the White Walkers got these massive chains to somehow lift Viserion, who's underneath the water. But for some reason, I still believed in the writers. I still had faith that miraculously they'd come through in the final season, that they'd really buckle down and deliver us something really special. Unfortunately, I was let down. That doesn't mean that there aren't good moments in every single season of Game of Thrones, because there are, and anyone who says that there aren't is lying. But oh my god, the last season is definitely the worst. It seems like they cared more about meeting plot points than making sure that character development and progression felt natural and authentic. I also think it's important to keep in mind that books and television are completely different mediums that require very specific storytelling techniques. There are time constraints and a budget that limits a show like Game of Thrones from achieving what its book counterpart can. I think it would have been a daunting task for anyone to wrap up a show like Game of Thrones. But even saying that, I think D&D dropped the ball completely in season 8. I think the last 2 seasons having only 7 and 6 episodes reflects the pacing issues. You can't wrap up a story of this scale with so many different pieces at play with 3 to 4 less hours of screen time to work with.
We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life. You know, if you've read my novels, you know there was enough material for more seasons. They made certain cuts.
Just admit it, George. Winds of Winter was a troll all along. We all know it.
How do you do
I really like that they showed Sansa and Arya's first viewing of a dragon, and I really like the tone of the episode. The sky is dark and foreboding. Then the lords and ladies sit down to talk, and the meeting hall in Winterfell is insanely dark. You'd assume that they would light the chandeliers. So Tyrion tells the lords of Winterfell that the Lannister army is marching north.
And soon the Lannister army will ride north to join our cause.
You serious?
It's hilarious that he believes Cersei to begin with, as if she hasn't been ruthlessly selfish, stubborn, and sociopathic her entire life.
The dead will come north first. Enjoy dealing with them. We will deal with whatever is left of you.
But a wise man once said that you should never believe a thing simply because you want to believe it.
My armies will not stand down. I will not pull them back to the capital. I will march them north to fight alongside you in the Great War.
That you should never believe a thing simply because you want to believe it.
Dumb cunt.
Tyrion knows her. He's supposed to be the smart guy. In season 2, Tyrion tells Grandmaster Pycelle of a secret plan about marrying off Princess Marcella, but he tells different versions to Varys and Littlefinger to find out which one is informing on him to the queen. Remember the whole, a mind needs books like a sword needs a whetstone? Remember in season 2 when he told Varys that he knows how to play the game?
I'm not Ned Stark. I understand the way this game is played.
Well, I guess somehow he just forgot. All of his wit and intelligence just goes out the window this season. He becomes a complete moron. Even Sansa calls him out for being an idiot, and it's wonderful. It's like D&D are unknowingly self-aware of their own terrible writing.
Tyrion's told everybody that the Lannisters are coming to join the cause, and it's amazing to her that this person she thought was so smart would ever take Cersei at her word on something like that.
I used to think you were the cleverest man alive.
You are not the clown outfit.
People make mistakes, I get that, and Tyrion has made plenty. I just don't find him misreading his own sister very believable. He knows her better than mostly everyone.
You're a clever man. But you're not half as clever as you think you are.
Still makes me more clever than you.
I will march them north to fight alongside you in the Great War.
Are you sure about that?
How do you know this?
That's what I do. I drink and I know things.
Either you knew Cersei was lying and let me believe otherwise, or you didn't know at all, which makes you either a traitor or a fool.
I was a fool.
That you should never believe a thing simply because you want to believe it.
I was a fool.
That doesn't make any goddamn sense.
In the show, Euron comes across as an arrogant, egotistical horn dog, not the ruthless, intimidating, and power-hungry character from the books. It seems like his show rendition just wants to have sex with Cersei. He's only ever talking about sex. It's weird. He mentions sex with Jaime on the beach,
And I fucked the queen.
with Cersei in the throne room,
She gives me no sign of affection.
with Yara on his ship,
But first, I'm gonna fuck the queen.
with Cersei in her bedchamber.
How do I compare to the fat king?
Like, I get it, this guy has been out at sea forever and he must be really horny, but maybe make him mention it once? I think once would be just fine. And where is his goddamn eye patch? It would be a great way to distinguish him from the other villains if he was wearing an eye patch. And it would give him a more pirate-esque vibe, as well as being more faithful to the source material. Then we get a scene of Theon saving Yara. Later on her ship, she says to Theon that she's going to retake the Iron Islands, a place where Euron can't currently defend because he's at King's Landing. She allows Theon to take some men to help defend Winterfell. But strangely, Yara just kind of vanishes until the finale, and she doesn't even try to assist Daenerys during the battle for King's Landing. Remember in season 6 when Yara went up to Dany and Meereen and offered to assist her get the throne in exchange for Yara being Queen of the Iron Islands? Well, that's weird because Yara does very little to help Dany, aside from delivering Theon and like 10 Ironborn.
Some of you may be quick to forgive. The Ironborn are not. I swore to follow Daenerys Targaryen.
I would have liked to have seen just a little bit more of a conclusion to her character, aside from, you know, nothing. Now, I get that the Iron Islands are kind of far away, and she had to sail all the way around, but it takes a while to get from Winterfell all the way down to King's Landing on horse. And considering ships are much faster than horses, I don't see any reason why she couldn't turn around and come back to King's Landing and try and help her. Maybe she didn't know what was going on, but you would assume Varys would have sent a raven to all of the people that could help them. You know, if Dany loses, then Euron is still a threat, right? I don't know, this whole thing's just such a mess. So then Varys foreshadows Dany and Jon's relationship ending by saying nothing lasts. The exchanges between Arya and the Hound, Sansa and Jon, Jon and Dany, Dany and Sam are all pretty decent. Sam learning about his father and brother's death was well done. John Bradley did a pretty good job conveying his emotions in this scene. I like the decision to have Sam tell Jon in the crypt about his real parents. Doesn't seem to me like there's a better place that this could have happened, because in the crypt they can look at the statues of the people that they're talking about. So then there's a scene where Tormund runs into Beric Dondarrion, and Ed says,
Stay back, he's got blue eyes!
And oh my god, it's so dumb. How could he possibly make out Tormund's eye color in this dimly lit corridor? And what is that message from the Night King? That spiral thing? They show it multiple times throughout the show, but it's meaningless, and it's so frustrating. I thought Jaime locking eyes with Bran after all this time was a pretty good way to end the episode, though I doubt he would have immediately recognized him. It's been quite a while. Episode 2 opens up with Jaime being interrogated by Dany. Jaime tells her that Cersei has 20,000 fresh troops from the Golden Company. I find it strange how Lannister hair just gets less and less blonde every season. Later, Dany is scolding Tyrion for being an absolute moron, which again is great. Then we get the whole Arya and Gendry romance, which is awkward as hell. I still can't help but see Arya as the little girl from season 1. And it doesn't help that she's like 3 feet tall. She looks like she's 15 still. So it's just so weird watching this. Then there's the scene when Jaime knights Brienne, which was easily one of, if not my favorite moment from season 8. The moment when you see joy spread across her face because this is something that she's wanted her entire life. And to be knighted by Jaime of all people, a man that she loves. It was just really nice to see, especially since we know that Brienne has had a pretty shitty life. Then Podrick randomly becomes a good singer.
High in the halls of the kings who are gone, Jenny would dance.
Then we get a scene of Dany and Jon in the crypt. Jon is a complete idiot and decided that it'd be a great idea to tell Dany that he is the rightful heir to the throne, because that totally won't complicate everything if they manage to survive. If he had no desire to sit on the throne anyway, then why on earth would he tell her this? I get that Jon is a man of honor and that he doesn't like lying or keeping secrets, but maybe this once, he could keep something to himself. You know how like Ned Stark kept Jon a secret his entire life in order to save his life? Sometimes keeping things to yourself is the right thing to do. But Jon's like a 5-year-old dumbass who's like, Mommy always told me to tell the truth. Clearly giving Dany this information would only introduce a lot of unwanted tension into their relationship.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Episode 3 is probably the messiest episode of the entire season, and the darkest. And I don't mean tone. Like, the brightness is so low that it's hard to tell what's going on during some of the scenes. The episode starts by panning across our characters awaiting what they all assume is probably their last fight on this planet. Some are scared shitless like Sam, and others stand resolute, ready to give their life for a greater cause. Melisandre comes out of literally nowhere, like, where was she? So she uses her magic to light up all the Dothraki Erics. It's quite the spectacle, and it's smart, you know, since now they can actually kill some of the undead instead of swinging at them with useless steel. Then the Dothraki charge directly into the void with no plan whatsoever. I guess Dany and Jon were trying to get the Night King to show himself, but how would charging your forces directly at them accomplish this? Aren't these people supposed to be war veterans? They decide to extinguish their entire cavalry without knowing where the dead are or what they're capable of. And in doing this, they supplied the dead with hundreds of more soldiers. It's unbelievable.
We can't beat them in a straight fight.
Did Jon forget about when he barely escaped the undead army? And when he stood there on a boat and watched as the Night King raised all of the dead wildlings? He should know that the plan should be to keep everyone as far away from the dead as possible, and to pick them off as much as possible before initializing hand-to-hand combat. Fighting them face to face should be the last option, and during the meeting that they had in the war room, you see how many soldiers that they predict that the undead have at their disposal. You see the tiny cavalry that they have. Why would they charge them into the abyss and waste valuable soldiers? It doesn't make any sense. It was a cool visual, watching all the flaming Erics get snuffed out, but that's all it was. It's like D&D want all of the Game of Thrones fans to sit and watch these episodes with their minds turned off. Like they want us to be scrolling through Twitter and watching this shit. I mean, yeah, watching all the Dothraki die definitely gives the viewer a sense of despair, but there are ways to go about doing this while also making sense. And if the plan was to lure out the Night King, well, you can't see the guy anyway, so it's not like you can catch him with his pants down with the dragons. Why didn't Jon or Dany use their dragons to light up the place a bit so the Dothraki could see what they're getting themselves into? And why is Ghost charging with them? It's not like he could kill any of them anyway. It would have been much smarter to flank the army of the dead with the cavalry and catch them off guard. They might have actually been able to kill some of them. And at that point, when the cavalry is snuffed out, it'd give an even greater sense of hopelessness to the viewer, because then it'd feel like the battle tactics weren't at fault. It was that the dead were so impossible to defeat that didn't matter what they did. So then we see a total of what appears to be like 10 Dothraki emerge from the darkness, along with Ser Jorah. Now, I'm no war veteran or anything, and I'm not a battle tactician. Why are the trebuchets in front of the foot soldiers? Shouldn't they be behind the army so they can keep using them? And for whatever reason, they stop using them as soon as they see the Dothraki die. There's clearly ammunition available. Keep firing! Are you afraid you're gonna hit some of them? Because I think it's pretty clear that most of them are dead, especially since you saw a bunch of them run back. Then we get this really cool moment. It's horrifying. A wave of dead emerges from the darkness, crashing down and devouring everything in its path. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh my god! All these people are so fucked! And you really had that sinking feeling in your stomach. Like, oh my god, how is anyone gonna make it out of this alive? But of course, everyone has plot armor in this episode. So Grey Worm, Tormund, one-handed useless Jaime, Sam, who's a coward, and Gendry, who has practically no combat experience, the Hound, Podrick, Beric Dondarrion, and Brienne are all on the front lines. And by some miracle, they all make it out of this fight alive. And not just alive, unscathed. It's insulting to the viewer, honestly. At least it looked cool, I guess. And there are moments when these characters get dogpiled by the dead. They're on the ground fending for their lives, but then someone just walks over and swings at them once, and then they all just kind of go away, so that's convenient. If you couldn't see anything before, well, now the Night King has brought a storm into the fray to really blind the audience. It's great. So then Melisandre is escorted by the Unsullied to the trench so she can light it. Why is she moving so slow? This is kind of a dire situation. Put some pep in your step, bitch, damn. And why can't she just hold some wood and light the trench from a distance like she did with the Dothraki Eric's? Maybe because there's snow on the trench and that makes it more difficult, so she has to be in direct contact with it. I don't know. Wait a minute, so Jon is sitting right there with his dragon? Why didn't he just, light the trench with the dragon? So then we get a scene of all the women, children, and useless people in the crypt. Kind of a strange place to put them when the person you're fighting against can, raise the dead, but okay. You'd assume that book-smart old Tyrion would think of this. Oh right, he's dumb now. My mistake. Theon and Bran talk for a second in the God's Wood before Bran fucks off and wargs into some ravens to get a better view of the battle. He was getting kind of bored. And Theon didn't help because he was making the situation super awkward with all that small talk. If I was Bran, I'd want to go fly around too. Then there's the scene where Lyanna Mormont rushes the giant with an axe, but instead of just swiping her away like a fly, he grabs her and holds her up to his face and slowly crushes her. Was it going to eat her? Was it curious? I didn't know zombies had that kind of cognitive capability, but I guess you learn something new every day. It was still a pretty cool scene though, and I really like the message that the smallest fighters can bring down the largest opponents if they believe in themselves. Like a David and the Goliath type of thing. Then the dragon starts fighting in midair, and then we get the scene where Arya is sneaking around the library. I kind of liked it. It was a good departure from the non-stop fighting. The Night King uses Viserion to blow a hole through the side of Winterfell, but then Jon and Rhaegal attack him. Through the midair scuffle, the Night King falls off of Viserion. Dany finds him down there and uses Drogon to blast him with fire. But the dragon's flame power is super inconsistent. He's able to stand his ground when other times the dragon fire can literally blow holes in the sides of castles. Maybe the dragon's settings were on slow roast instead of full blast. The Night King lets out a slow lull and strolls up to Winterfell. Daenerys, if fire doesn't work, the dragon can always bite him. Go grab him and fly away with him. Bring him somewhere. That might help your situation. And technically a dragon tooth is kind of like dragon glass, right? So wouldn't the dragon biting the Night King kill him? So the reason Dany didn't attack him with the dragon is because she was scared away, because conveniently the Night King found one of those spears that he used to kill Viserion on the ground, and he throws it at Dany, but he misses. Now I get that this guy's kind of scary and daunting, but you got a dragon and he's on the ground and it's just him. I mean, he missed you with the spear. Why don't you go back and try and kill him a second time? From her perspective, it looks like he pulled it out of his ass, so it's hard to blame her. And he pretty much did, let's be fair. And I know that he fell out of the sky with it, but what are the odds that it lands right next to him? What? I like the scene when the Night King raises the dead as Jon races towards him, although Jon surviving this situation is kind of silly, and of course he does. I mean, look at all of them. So then the undead in the crypt start punching through inches of stone with nothing but bone, because that makes sense. Dany swoops down with Drogon and saves Jon, which, alright, fine. Somehow Jon was able to survive long enough for the dragon to come and save him. I guess he was on a killing spree. Jon tells her that he needs to get to Bran, but instead of hopping on the dragon, which would be much quicker, he decides to hoof it, even after what he just saw. Cool. Dany starts daydreaming, and the undead start climbing on Drogon, like ants on an anthill. In trying to get the undead off of him, he shakes off Dany by accident. Ser Jorah comes out of nowhere to save her from the dead, because of course Jorah is still outside the castle walls fighting by himself and surviving. Theon and the Ironborn are able to hold off way too many wights with nothing but a couple of bows. I mean, look at how many dead are rushing at him right now. So people are being massacred down the crypt, all except for our plot-armored friends, of course. Then a beautiful piece from Ramin Djawadi plays as our brave characters survive way too long as the dead come at them wave after wave. At points, it looks like they're being overrun, but the next second, they're fighting fine again. It's very weird. So remember how undead Viserion blew a hole through Winterfell? Well, he must be out of breath or something, because Jon hides behind a fucking rock to avoid Viserion's dragon fire. What? Is this a joke? I'm surprised the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme didn't play just then. Here, I'll do it for you. Then there's a nice moment between Bran and Theon when Theon realizes that there's no way out. But then it's ruined by Theon recklessly throwing his life away by charging at the Night King instead of standing his ground. And it just comes across silly and awkward. Jon stands up and screams at the dragon. I'm not even joking. Like, what was he doing? Ah, man. Then we get the infamous Arya instant transmission scene. Who knows where she came from? Maybe she was bouncing off the heads of the whites in the distance or something. She was doing it like Mario, you know? Apparently all the undead were so fixated on the Night King that they completely ignored the girl that ran right past them. And just like that, the single most horrifying threat in the world is extinguished because the 100 White Walkers surrounding the Night King didn't have their hearing aids in or something. This victory wasn't only nonsensical, it was extremely shallow. Arya bested the Night King only because D&D needed her to do something special this season. Arya was risking her life, but she wasn't struggling with any internal conflicts. She didn't overcome any fears. The real conflict should be internal, the human heart in conflict with itself. As soon as you strip all that away and make it completely about physical prowess and capability, it loses all of its meaning. Is the Night King mentioned later in the show? Nope. Does his death have consequences later on in the season? Nope. Was there any reason for him to exist? Not really. Why did he have to go himself to kill Bran? Couldn't he just have his minions do it? Surely that would be easier and a lot smarter. Why is the Night King so stupid? So Melisandre exits the castle, removes her necklace that was keeping her alive, and dies. Her life's purpose achieved. Davos looks on as the woman who killed Stannis Baratheon's daughter Shireen dies, allowing him some recompense. Not a bad way to end a very bad episode. Episode 4 starts with the world's most impressive incel finally getting a kiss from the woman he loves. It only cost him his life. Fair trade. Overall, this is a pretty decent funeral scene. I don't think there are nearly enough bodies though. Jon's voice during his speech sounds a little off. The speech itself was okay, but to me it sounded like he was trying too hard to sound serious. It sounded like he was putting on a voice. Why didn't they just have him talk normally?
Who set aside their differences.
Are you making your voice deeper?
Owes them a debt that can never be repaid.
He just did it again.
This is my voice.
I liked when Dany named Gendry Lord Baratheon of Storm's End, and the rest of the celebration scene is pretty good as well. However, I wasn't aware that there's a Starbucks next to Winterfell. The moment between Gendry and Arya is cute, except somehow they messed up Gendry's surname.
I'm not Gendry Rivers anymore. I'm Gendry Baratheon.
He's Gendry Waters, not Gendry Rivers. Not only is Gendry not from the Riverlands, but he couldn't use the surname Waters to begin with because he's an unacknowledged bastard. So when Gendry forgot his own last name and said, "I'm not Gendry Rivers anymore," that doesn't make sense because he was never a legitimized bastard, so he would never be Gendry Rivers or Gendry Waters or any of those surnames. It wasn't until Daenerys Targaryen named him a Baratheon that he was legitimized. The Jaime and Brienne love scene is the most uncomfortable scene in the episode. There is zero sexual chemistry between these two. I mean, there's friendship chemistry, sure, but zero sexual chemistry. It's weird for me to say this, but I'd rather watch him bang his sister. Yeah, I know. It's sick, but you know you feel the same, don't lie. It almost feels like Jaime is banging her as a favor to her, not because he actually wants to. At no point in the show does it ever feel like Jaime likes her in this way. He's impressed by her at some points, but I never felt like he was ever sexually aroused by her. I feel like Tormund has more of a reason to be in bed with Brienne than Jaime.
The big woman's still here?
Then Jon finds out that making out with his aunt is a little weird. Dany tries to convince him to keep his true identity a secret from the world, but he responds by saying that he has to tell Sansa and Arya. Why? What will that accomplish? It's like Jon is incapable of keeping secrets, even if it's the wise decision. Jon is constantly making bad decisions, mainly because he has to live up to this weird moral code that even his father didn't live up to. And even after he learns that his father has been lying to him his entire life, he still, for whatever reason, has to tell everyone about everything that he knows. It's so stupid. Then Dany says that telling Sansa will only make her conspire against Dany to see Jon on the throne, and that she isn't the girl that Jon grew up with. How does Dany recognize this, but Jon doesn't? Dany hardly even knows Sansa. Jon is insufferable. He lacks any sort of foresight or common sense, and D&D make him act this way on purpose, simply so they can move the Adolf Stormborn plot forward. Sansa tells Dany that their forces need time to heal before they can leave Winterfell. Yeah, but like, it takes a month to get to King's Landing from Winterfell. Surely those that can travel can mend on the road, and those that can't travel won't be able to fight anyway. So, but instead of arguing this, Dany's just like, well, I need to go to war now. We need to go to war now. I don't care what happens. I don't care if I have 6 troops. I'm going to war. And I'm gonna get me that throne. Then Jon has Bran tell Arya and Sansa that he's a Targaryen in the Godswood, and he has them both swear to not tell anyone the truth about him. But then that dumb bitch Sansa tells Tyrion anyway. So I guess we have Sansa to thank for all those thousands of deaths. Hail the Queen of the North, the Queen of Death. Then we get the infamous scene where Jon heads south to go to war and doesn't even pet Ghost goodbye. Hilariously, the excuse they use is that it wasn't in the budget, only to bamboozle us and have Jon pet him anyway in the finale. Did they add this scene into the finale at the last second because people were mad? I don't get it. Why didn't they just have him pet him before he left? That seems like something Jon would probably do. Then they fast travel to King's Landing, and Rhaegal gets no-scoped by Euron's fleet. You don't even see some of the arrows fly past first. They somehow have perfect aim with those massive scorpions. They hit something moving thousands of feet in the sky, and then they nearly hit Dany right off a Drogon. Now I get that they've had a while to build these and practice with them, but come on. How could they possibly replicate hitting a dragon in the sky at that range? They didn't hit Rhaegal once, not twice, but 3 times in succession. It's laughable. One goes straight through its neck, which is like the size of a pin from that distance. Please. Well, by seeing this, we can clearly tell that Dany's dragons are fucked. Completely fucked. And I gotta say, someone better go fetch Rhaegal's corpse from the ocean, because those body parts are probably extremely valuable. But then Dany dive bombs Euron's fleet like an absolute moron after seeing Rhaegal die in an instant.
You dumb bitch.
But this time they somehow miss every shot when the dragon's flying directly at them in a straight line and much closer. Not to mention that Drogon is even larger than Rhaegal. But alright, I guess you just got really lucky before or something. Like when you go to the casino and you win like 5 times in a row, and then lose for the rest of the time you're there. And according to D&D, she forgot that Euron's fleet was even a thing.
Dany kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces. They certainly haven't forgotten about her.
What? Did they watch their own show? There's a scene of Varys literally telling her about the fleet.
And the Golden Company has arrived in King's Landing, courtesy of the Greyjoy fleet. The balance has grown distressingly even. The Greyjoy fleet, the Greyjoy fleet.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening.
So then Euron obliterates Dany's fleet of ships, so obviously a bunch of her Unsullied are dead, because there's no way that they could swim in full armor. So this has depleted a lot of her forces, right? Wrong. Look at this scene during the finale. They're all fine. Did all of them manage to swim to shore? How the hell did Tyrion swim to shore? No offense, but being a dwarf must inhibit his ability to swim by quite a lot, and I don't see any rowboats around. Surely they must have lost a lot of their spears and shields in the sea, right? Nope. And to think that this is the same show that was so focused on realism that they had King Robert die by being stabbed by a boar while he was out hunting them, drunk. I really liked how Cersei brought a bunch of innocent people near the Red Keep as a way to keep Dany from using her dragons against her. That sounds like something she would do. Varys and Tyrion discuss their current predicament. This scene marks the end of Varys and his genius. If this was truly the Varys that we all know and love, then he'd wisely keep his desire for Jon on the throne a secret.
When I see what desire does to people, what it's done to this country, I am very glad to have no part in it.
All of his treasonous acts would be in secret, or would be in letter form. He would manipulate people ever so slightly with words. He would use his little birds to spy on people and tell him things. He wouldn't care if it took years. Varys was always about self-preservation while also doing what he thought was best for the realm.
The storms come and go. The big fish eat the little fish, and I keep on paddling.
But all of a sudden, he wants to risk his life to send a message to Tyrion. Just doesn't make sense.
Can you free me from this pit?
I could. But will I? No. As I said, I'm no hero.
Then Jaime learns about Euron killing Dany's dragon and destroying her ships. Feeling like he may no longer be on the winning side, he decides to ride south to be with Cersei again. When most of us thought that Jaime was a changed man, that fighting for the living and loving Brienne changed the way he saw the world, well, you can all go fuck yourselves, because Jaime isn't on his way to King's Landing to secretly assassinate Cersei because he knows it's the right thing to do, and that he's the only person that could get close enough to her to do it. Instead, his character development is thrown out the window completely, and he reverts back to his old self in an instant, even though he has said countless times that he isn't the Golden Lion anymore.
Well, my Golden Lion days are done.
Subverting expectations isn't always a good thing, D&D. Yes, the audience expected Jaime to have been lying to Brienne in this scene because he actually cares about her, and he doesn't want her to miss him because there's a good chance that he will die trying to assassinate Cersei. Instead, D&D had him tell the truth to Brienne, which is not only extremely unsatisfying to his character arc, but also doesn't make any sense. It would have been great to see Jaime kill Cersei, to see him wrestle with that in his brain since he's loved her for so long, and to watch him get cut down by the mountain. It would fulfill Jaime's redemption arc and also leave the audience upset that someone that we like is dying. You know, the Kingslayer becomes the Queenslayer. His one last act was a good one, a selfless one. As if Brienne's life wasn't hell already. The man she loves abandons her in the middle of the night because he wants to fuck his sister again.
She's hateful. And so am I.
D&D wants to believe that there's only one person in all of Westeros that Jaime cares for that isn't a Lannister, and that's Brienne.
When he hears what Cersei's done, I think that's the turning point for him. At that point, Jaime really has to take a really long, uncomfortable look at who he really is. Look at who he really is.
Look at who he really is.
So why then in episode 2, season 8, did Jaime approach Bran to apologize to him and say, I'm not that person anymore?
I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm not that person anymore.
Why did Jaime kill the Mad King to save thousands of innocent people from burning alive if he doesn't care about the common folk?
To be honest, I never really cared much for them. Innocent or otherwise.
You liar!
Why did Jaime say this to Brienne when they were in the baths at Harrenhal?
If your precious Renly commanded you to kill your own father and stand by while thousands of men, women, and children burned alive, would you have done it?
Why did Jaime ride a month to get to Winterfell by himself to pledge his allegiance to Brienne and to fight beside her, completely putting his ego aside so he can help defend humanity against the dead, only to completely revert back to his old selfish ways and ride back to Cersei? What? Why did he save Brienne from the bear pit? Why did Jaime task Brienne with finding and protecting Sansa?
You'll use it to defend Ned Stark's daughter. Lady Stark's dead. Arya's probably dead too, but there's still a chance to find Sansa and get her somewhere safe.
Clearly, there is some good in him. Like, I get it, D&D. Jaime cares for Cersei. That's why Jaime killing her would have been such a powerful moment, because of their history together. Who cares about good writing anymore? So then we get this scene outside of King's Landing. Qyburn says your armies are battle-wearied and depleted.
Your armies are battle-weary and depleted.
Which makes sense, right? She had a lot of them killed at Winterfell. Huron took out a good chunk of them by destroying your ships. But look at this scene from episode 6! What the fuck? Are her soldiers fucking amoebas? Anyway, so Tyrion approaches Cersei like a dumbass. She can easily have him killed right here. I don't know why she didn't. In fact, she could easily just annihilate Dany and her loyal subjects with the scorpions that are mounted on the walls of King's Landing right here and now, which would end the war outright. Why didn't she? This is the same stone-cold bitch that blew up the Sept of Baelor, killing hundreds for the throne. Right? Oh, but of course, we don't see any consequences of that later, which is another complaint, but whatever. Cersei desperately wants Dany to go crazy and kill thousands of innocents, doesn't she? So Varys tries to convince Jon that he should be king.
I don't want it.
I don't understand why Varys is putting himself out in the open like this. If this really was the Varys that we know, he would wait to speak to Jon in a place where he knows other people couldn't see or hear him. But here, he just kind of does it out in the open all willy-nilly. Clearly, if Varys is trying to stop Dany from going crazy, talking to other people about betraying her will only raise the risk of that. So Tyrion saw Jon and Varys talking, and like a dumbass tells Dany about Varys' treason. Doing this shows Dany that none of her advisors are to be trusted, and not only her advisors, also Jon. Why would Tyrion do this? All Dany had left were her advisors. Cool. Now she has nothing. No matter how loyal, Tyrion has never been a dumbass. In this season, he is a complete idiot.
It was a mistake. Dumb cunt.
So Varys is taken away and burnt alive.
It was me.
Yeah, no shit!
When I see what desire does to people, what it's done to this country, I am very glad to have no part in it.
He doesn't even scream. What a Chad. In the next scene, Jon fails to return Dany's affections when she needs it the most. What the hell, Jon? Just fake it. Jesus fucking Christ. It's not like you don't love her, and it's not like she isn't hot. What is wrong with you? If you just slept with her that one night, then maybe all of the bloodshed would be avoided. But Jon is all about honor, and he's all about doing the right thing. And this doesn't feel right because she's his aunt, and it's weird. Yeah, it's a little weird, but you slept with her once before, so it's not like you'd be crossing a line that hasn't already been crossed. There is so much stupidity in this season that it's honestly baffling. Tyrion then tells Dany that if she hears bells, that means the city has surrendered, and to call off the attack.
If the city surrenders, they will ring the bells and raise the gates. Please, if you hear them ringing the bells, call off the attack.
When in a previous season, Davos said himself that he never knew bells to mean surrender, and he's from King's Landing.
I've never known bells to mean surrender. They want to play music with us, let's play. Drums.
The writers don't even know their own show. Then Arya and the Hound ride up to King's Landing together. They get stopped by a guard, but like, why isn't Arya using faces to achieve anything anymore? How come she completely forgot about her cool abilities after killing Walter Frey? She could have easily infiltrated the Red Keep before any fighting started by taking the face of one of Cersei's handmaidens. She could assassinate Cersei and stop the war. But of course she doesn't make it in time because she's riding along like she has a fucking year to do it. So Tyrion releases Jaime from captivity. Jaime says to Tyrion that he's the stupidest Lannister because he forgot to take his golden hand off. That's how people recognized him. But I think season 8 Tyrion is a pretty strong contender. Tyrion then says there won't be an Iron Fleet for much longer.
There won't be an Iron Fleet for much longer.
When he was there, when that same fleet took down Rhaegal in literally 5 seconds. Okay then. Then it shows Arya and the Hound walking through the streets. Why aren't you running? Get your ass up there! You know war is gonna start any minute now, right? Why are you strolling up there like you're walking through crowds at Disney World? So then Dany attacks the Iron Fleet with Drogon. I like the tactic of using the sunlight to blind them from seeing your initial attack. And I get that they're caught off guard, but they all miss! His entire fleet missed Dany's largest dragon when it's flying in a straight path directly above them. Look at all those ships! It'd take a while to take them all out with a dragon. Euron sucks at this. Look at him trying to shoot Drogon right here. Why did he have them fire the Scorpion at such an awkward angle? Shoot at it when it's flying straight, not sideways, you doof. So Euron is definitely dead, right? Look at how far he has to swim. And not only that, he's clearly injured after his ship just blew up right from underneath him. No? You telling me he's fine? Okay, that makes sense. Remember all of the mounted Scorpions at King's Landing? Yeah, they all missed too. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand that they would miss. It must be very difficult to hit a flying object with these things. It makes sense that they'd miss. What I'm more upset about is that they hit Rhaegal 3 times in a row! So then Drogon literally blows a hole through the entrance to King's Landing. Let me just sit back and sip my tea as I remember the moment Jon avoided Dragonfire by hiding behind a fucking rock. Now check out all those Dothraki. Where the hell did they come from? Didn't they all die in Winterfell?
What they see is just the end of the Dothraki, essentially.
Do the Dothraki and Unsullied have a respawn time? So the Golden Company gets annihilated in like 2 seconds. So Dany and Jon's men storm the gates. Cersei is still in denial that she's losing, which makes sense. Then we get one of the most infuriating scenes in the entire history of the show. The Lannister army surrenders, and you can hear them screaming, "Ring the bell," when it doesn't even mean surrender, but whatever. And then presumably Jaime rings the bell, but it never shows him doing it, so we have no way of knowing. So if D&D were trying to give him this one last good deed, they failed to even show it, so whatever. So the bells are ringing, Dany has won, but then she goes postal. I guess the sound of victory pisses her off or something, so the dragon has awoken, and she decides to burn the shit out of everyone in King's Landing. And I mean everyone, the children, the women. I get that she's in a very bad place right now, but surely the Dany that we all know and love would do little more than burn down the Red Keep in a fit of rage. She might have killed a couple of innocents by accident, but nothing in me believes that Dany would have killed thousands of innocents, including women and children, without thinking twice about it. This is how D&D rationalized Dany going postal. The execution of Missandei. Okay, yeah, I can see why that'd make her vitriolic towards Cersei. That makes sense. Tyrion allows allowing Jaime to escape and telling Varys about Jon's true heritage. Okay, so she should dismiss Tyrion as her hand because he clearly sucks. Now give that title to Jon or something because he's obviously loyal. Rhaegal being shot out of the sky. Yes, I can see that would make her very hateful towards Euron's fleet. So watching her destroy his fleet makes a lot of sense, right? Jon not returning her affections, even though he's still very clearly loyal and tells her over and over that he doesn't desire the crown. People don't love her here, they love Jon. When she has an entire army that loves her, and she clearly didn't have much trouble garnering support and love in the past, her victory over the dead at Winterfell would clearly give the people of Westeros more of a reason to like her than Cersei, especially once they learn of Cersei's betrayal. But I guess she didn't think of that? She unleashed the dragon, the deep hidden rage that all Targaryen children inherit from their parents. Except Rhaegar was a pretty chill dude, and Jon never lost his mind, and he's been literally murdered, so that argument is kind of weak.
There is something kind of chilling about the way that Dany has responded to the death of her enemies. And if circumstances had been different, I don't think the side of Dany ever would have come out.
Our queen's nature is fire and blood.
You think our house words are stamped on our bodies when we're born, and that's who we are? Then I'd be fire and blood too. She's not her father, no more than your Tywin Lannister.
Not to mention that Dany has gone through many trials and tribulations during her time in Essos. She was raped, but not once did she crack and start killing innocent people. Her unborn child died. The man that she loved most in the world died. Her brother treated her like trash. Dany had her entire family murdered and she was shipped off to Essos. How come she just happened to lose her mind now when she had all this other shit happen to her? Now I know that there's foreshadowing in season 2 of Dany walking towards an Iron Throne covered in snow. Yes, foreshadowing can be a very effective storytelling technique, but just because you add foreshadowing doesn't make your story good. Just saying. So in Yunkai, she frees all the slaves. That's a pretty nice thing to do.
How many slaves are there in Yunkai?
200,000.
Then we have 200,000 reasons to take the city.
She has the slavers of Meereen crucified just like they crucified their slaves. In season 4, a villager approaches Dany in Meereen and shows her the charred body of his child. In response, Dany immediately locks up her dragons in the fighting pits below Meereen because of her dragons killing one innocent. In season 5, Daario urges Dany to use her wedding with Hisdar as an opportunity to murder all the wise masters that oppose her. She ignores this in favor of a more political and merciful strategy. In season 6, Yara and Theon offer to assist Dany and Meereen, in return for Yara being named Queen of the Iron Islands when Dany wins the throne. Dany agrees under one condition, that the Ironborn serving under her no longer rape and pillage.
Our fathers were evil men, all of us here. They left the world worse than they found it. We're not going to do that. We're going to leave the world better than we found it.
At the end of season 7, she decides to go with this random guy, Jon Snow, to protect the people of Westeros from the undead. Hundreds of miles away from King's Landing, she does this instead of immediately reclaiming the throne. She agrees to do this knowing that the White Walkers murdered one of her dragons already. She risks the other two to fight a war that she could very well lose, simply because it's the right thing to do. She's risking her life and the life of her men to protect Westeros, the same place that had her entire family murdered. Season 8, episode 4, she says that the Seven Kingdoms will know a world without fear or cruelty under her rule.
In all 7 kingdoms, men will live without fear and cruelty.
She literally says that she doesn't want to be Queen of the Ashes.
I am not here to be Queen of the Ashes.
She has dedicated her life to helping the common folk, so it makes zero sense that she'd abandon every principle she's ever had just because she's pissed.
Have you shot your final scenes yet, and are you happy with how things ended? Yeah. She didn't say yes. You didn't say yes.
Best season ever!
To be fair, there are a couple moments when Dany comes across a little bit more violent than she should.
Sometimes it is better to answer injustice with mercy.
I will answer injustice with justice.
But it was always because she was doing what she thought was right.
If you want to sit on the throne your ancestors built, you must win it. That will mean blood on your hands before the thing is done.
The blood of my enemies, not the blood of innocents.
She was proven right again and again that the slave masters of Slaver's Bay were not to be trusted, and they wanted to take down Dany at all costs. So in response, it only makes sense that she would do everything in her power to take them down.
The masters tear babies from their mothers' arms. They mutilate little boys by the thousands. They train little girls in the art of pleasuring old men. They treat men like beasts.
And the fact that more often than not, she would give these awful people an option to change their ways speaks to her character.
We're here to discuss your surrender, not mine. He will tell the masters what has happened in Meereen. He will explain the choice they have before them. They can live in my new world, or they can die in their old one.
And you know, she has said repeatedly throughout the show, I will take what is mine with fire and blood.
Why would she murder thousands of innocent people? This bitch is Abe Lincoln on crack! So Jon Snow seems just as surprised as the audience during the scene. We certainly had our expectations subverted. You did it, D&D. Expectations 100% successfully subverted in the worst way possible. Then hilariously, Jaime runs into Euron Greyjoy, who just happened to wash up on shore as Jaime's walking up to the Red Keep. Euron talks about sex again, big surprise, and they fight. Jaime is wounded but ends up killing Euron. How do these two characters have anything to do with one another? Through their relationship with Cersei? It's so weak, and I don't get why Euron is even fighting Jaime to begin with. The war is over. Cersei lost. There is no point for them to fight, and this is ignoring the fact that Euron just swam for like an hour straight. You think he's fit to fight right now? He should be exhausted. So Arya and Hound are still moseying their way along, but the Hound convinces Arya to turn back because the castle is crumbling. Well, maybe if you got there a little sooner. Then we get this very, very awkward fight on a staircase between the Hound and the Mountain. I like the idea of Sandor Clegane dying at the hands of his brother. It makes sense for his arc, but why did it have to be on a staircase of all places? And the way that they did it, it almost made it seem like a Dark Souls boss fight. Oh my god, swords aren't effective, we gotta push him off a cliff. It seems eerily similar to a fight in Sekiro. So Jaime finds his way to Cersei. They embrace each other, try to escape, but then get crushed by some rocks. What a shitty fucking end to give to these two characters that have been around since episode 1 of season 1. The Hound's death was awkward, but it was leagues better than being crushed by rocks. The rest of the episode follows Arya as she tries and fails to save innocent lives, and then rides off on a random white horse. This scene and this horse is probably supposed to be symbolic for something, but I just don't fucking care anymore.
If you could describe the season finale of Game of Thrones in one word, how would you describe it?
Disappointing.
The finale starts with Tyrion slowly walking through the rubble of King's Landing. He walks past a naked Deadpool. Jon Snow and Grey Worm have a disagreement, then Tyrion finds Cersei and Jaime in the rubble. He starts crying because their character arcs ended so poorly. In all seriousness, Dinklage did a good job here. Would you take a look at all those Dothraki? Not to mention the Unsullied. It looks like they're fresh off of the boats from Essos. If only Stannis Baratheon from season 4 had the soldier multiplying spell that Dany has, then maybe he wouldn't have had to travel to Braavos to ask the Iron Bank for a loan to pay for another army after losing at the Battle of the Blackwater. But season 8 of Game of Thrones just doesn't care about logic, just throws that shit out the window. Let's just make stuff look cool. We want to make her look like Hitler, and in order to do that, we have to give her a shit ton of troops. Then we get this scene that everyone memed on Twitter. It shows Drogon fly away as Dany's exiting this room, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. There was this tweet by someone that said, oh, this should be taught in film school, but I much prefer this version with Jon in it. So Aedalth Targaryen has her little speech. This scene is very reminiscent of a Hitler speech. Like, yeah, D&D, we get it, she's evil. Tyrion approaches her and renounces his title as Hand of the Queen. He's then taken away to a jail cell somewhere. Then Arya says to Jon,
I know a killer when I see one.
well, yeah, I mean... Jon visits Tyrion in his cell, and they have a chat about Dany. Jon is in denial that Dany is evil for some reason. I know Jon has been a little slow in the past, but I think it's obvious that he's gotta put her down. I think Dany might have rabies. I would have liked to have seen a scene of Jon screaming in a room by himself, wrestling with this new position that he's been forced into. You know, I would have liked that a lot more instead of watching him trying to defend her to Tyrion. Why does Jon try to justify genocide to Tyrion when he literally just said that he can't justify what happened?
I can't justify what happened.
A few moments later.
She left her no choice. She saw her friend beheaded. She saw her dragon shot out of the sky. It's easy to judge when you're standing far from the battlefield.
Tyrion starts to make some sense by saying that throughout her life, she constantly gets revered for killing evil men.
Everywhere she goes, evil men die, and we cheer her for it.
And yeah, That should boost her ego by quite a lot. But that doesn't mean her principles change just because she's willing to kill evil men. You can be the most egotistical bastard on earth. Doesn't mean you're gonna murder thousands of innocent people because of it. I like the scene of Drogon popping out of the snow from what looked like a snow-covered boulder. Visually, it was pretty neat. Then we get this beautiful scene of Daenerys approaching the Iron Throne for the first time. The score is so good and the cinematography is so good. Jon enters the room. He was able to get to Dany because Drogon likes the way he smells, I guess. Kind of strange that she doesn't have any Unsullied guarding her, allowing Jon to get to her with his weapons on him. Jon tries to convince her that she's wrong. He's unsuccessful, so he stabs her in the heart while they're kissing.
Surprise, motherfucker!
So Drogon flies up because he can sense that she's dead. Instead of roasting Jon where he stands, he melts the Iron Throne. And why did the dragon do this? Was he like, oh, there's a pointy thing in Dany. Oh, there's a pointy thing over there. Kill the pointy thing! Or maybe dragons are much smarter than we give them credit for. No, Jon. It was power that killed my mother. A structural and pervasive system of coercion under which you and I are merely actors. Why would I burn you? By melting the throne, I have signaled my rejection of a discourse of violence and hubris. In this way, I have fulfilled my mother's dream of breaking the wheel. Some time passes, and then there's a meeting held with all the lords and ladies of Westeros. Do we ever get to see the effects of thousands and thousands of innocent people dying in King's Landing? Of course not. Does the rest of Westeros rise up against Dany's forces because of this act? Of course not. In this scene, Sam hides a water bottle behind his leg. Who can blame him? He's a chubby guy and it gets toasty. So they need to declare a new king before they can decide what needs to be done with Jon Snow. Even though Jon killed the person responsible for genocide, I guess he's still the criminal here, right? If word got out about this, realistically, Sansa would let everyone in Westeros know about what happened. That Jon is the true king, and that he just killed a woman responsible for murdering all of King's Landing. And something tells me that everyone in Westeros would probably help Sansa's cause, but I guess she didn't think about doing this. Like, what was the point in telling Tyrion about Jon if she's not even going to mention it later? So at this meeting, Sansa is a bitch to her uncle when he's just trying to put his name out there as a possibility. That's one way to get him to despise you. Then Tyrion suggests Bran as king. So then it's decided that Bran the Broken will be king.
All hail Bran the Broken.
What a cruel name to give to a cripple. Why not Bran No Legs? Or Bran the Wheelchair Warrior? Or Bran the Man Who Will Never Stand? Do we get a funeral or any sort of monument built for all the thousands of people who lost their lives to Dany? Of course not. Fuck him. Guess where Jon ends up? He takes the black. Again. Even though now there is no honor in taking the black because there's nothing to defend. I guess they have to change their oath to something like, we are the shield that keeps cutthroats and rapists cold and alone. It's just a home for losers now. And what a better place for Jon, the biggest loser of season 8. Tyrion could have told the council that Jon is actually a Targaryen and that he deserves the throne as the rightful heir. This would probably work regardless of what the Unsullied want, because they have no power here. Jon would have made more sense as the king because he has experience as a leader, but instead, he gets to be a crow again. He gets to return to the place where he was literally murdered by his brothers. What great memories he has up there. Sansa says to Jon,
I wish there'd been another way.
Yeah, there was another way, you idiot. You know that Jon is the rightful king. Why didn't you say anything at the council? So Arya travels west of Westeros to find the Resteros, which I guess is a callback from a previous season.
But what's west of Westeros?
And Sansa becomes Queen of the North, a title that she has wanted since she was a little girl. Brienne finishes Jaime's section in the Book of Brothers. Then Tyrion gets the new High Council together. Sir Davos corrects Bronn's grammar.
Or soon there won't be no more coin anymore.
A very nice callback to when he was being taught by Stannis and his daughter Shireen earlier in the show.
And it's 4 less fingernails to clean.
Fewer.
As if Tyrion wasn't a complete idiot already, he names Bronn Master of Coin when he knows nothing about finance.
Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, Lord of High God, and Lord Paramount of the Reach and Master of Coin.
And they still need a Master of War. What?
We appear to be missing a Master of Whisperers and a Master of War.
Yes, Your Grace.
Why isn't Bronn Master of War? And as if Bran needs a Master of Whisperers, did he forget that he's the three-eyed raven? Well, D&D obviously did, so there's our answer. Jon finally gets to pet Ghost, and what a sweet moment it is. But it's not enough, D&D. You've taken too much from us. This won't work. Overall, I didn't hate how they wrapped up the show. I liked all the callbacks. I just didn't like the steps that they took to get to this conclusion. And more importantly, how quickly it happened. The pacing was awful. This show could have easily been 10 or 11 seasons. So why were the White Walkers gathering children? And what was with that ceremony with the Night King? Why is Bran the Three-Eyed Raven, aside from giving the Valyrian steel dagger to Arya and deciding Hodor's fate? Because those are the only two reasons, and those two instances are just not powerful enough. Ultimately, season 8 fails because D&D decided to turn the characters into caricatures instead of personalities. The problem is that Hollywood doesn't know how to tell sociological stories, only very personal psychological stories. They focus entirely on the characters instead of the complex and ever-changing world around them. Game of Thrones stood out as a remarkable achievement in storytelling, not because the characters were especially likable, it was because their behavior, their rationalization of events, and their incentives and desires all felt incredibly real. And to watch main characters face the repercussions of a world that didn't care for plot armor or keeping the good people safe was a breath of fresh air in a Hollywood-dominated world of entertainment. It gave the viewer a sense of foreboding whenever the intro music would play, that something awful could happen to their favorite characters at any moment. And these awful things that seemed abrupt and random actually weren't. They propelled the story forward. For example, when Ned Stark was beheaded at the end of season 1, it wasn't only due to Joffrey being a belligerent child, it was due to Ned's own faults and 100 other different moving parts. And this one event drastically altered the tapestry of the world. The characters all made very human decisions based on their own rationale, desires, and incentives, and sometimes these characters pay the price for them. In season 7 and 8, it became very clear that D&D were putting the weight of the story onto the characters instead of the world, keeping them alive to serve a purpose later, instead of allowing the world to change based on events that are out of the characters' control, allowing the characters to die no matter how important, when they should, and not when the writers needed them to. When main players died in the past, it left the audience disappointed at times, but ultimately, we understood why it happened. People are complex, they lie, cheat, steal, and kill, and find a way to rationalize it, especially when corrupted by power. And this happened in Game of Thrones a lot. And we were always left with the question of how the living would change based on important characters' deaths. It wasn't all bad in season 8. There was a lot of spectacle, some very good cinematography, great costumes and sets. The acting was great for the most part, and by far the best thing about season 8 was Ramin Djawadi's beautiful score. It was just too bad that at the end of it all, it turned into just another cliche story of good defeating evil, instead of further exploring the complex characters and world that made Game of Thrones special.
I should have done this a long time ago.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to like it, maybe share it with your friends if you agree with anything that I said. Feel free to continue the discussion in the comments. I'll be reading those. This video was sponsored by my personal brand, Alien Clothing. Season 6 of Alien Clothing is right around the corner. I'm just finalizing it. This Game of Thrones Season 8 review took a lot of time. So thank you for being so patient with me. Thank you to all my patrons over on Patreon. You guys really help keep this channel going, and I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.